Who is funding and arming militant groups like the Balochistan Liberation Army and the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, enabling attacks like the Jafar Express thing that happened there, and missile strikes in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa? What triggered these attacks? Was it opposition to the China-Pakistan economic corridor, control over Balochistan's vast resources, or deeper geopolitical tensions? With over 340 hostages rescued. Are you sure about that? That's what the Pakistani military is claiming. And casualties between 21 and 28, 29 people. That's again a claim by the Pakistani army. You have to take it with a bucket full of salt. And why is the Pakistani foreign ministry blaming India? What are the broader regional geopolitical implications? Nice language. Uh, P. Mahasagar says, is the recent train hijack in Balochistan and the whole Balochistan freedom movement from behind the doors funded by India? Balochis are doing it themselves, or is the US supporting them, or is China behind it? Or maybe somebody else? What's behind this? Siddharth says, as trains are getting hijacked in Pakistan by the Balochistan Liberation Army, are we going to see a free Balochistan in the near future? So, first of all, let me categorically say this. There is no Indian hand behind this. India does not support any any kind of military or other action that would target civilians. Okay, India doesn't do that, and India doesn't support any insurgencies in foreign nations. We are a peaceful, peace-loving nation, and we India has been at the receiving end of terrorism for decades. Pakistan and US sponsored and funded terrorism for decades in the 20th century and also in the 21st century. So we, having been at the receiving end of this, would never do anything that would lead to similar consequences in other nations, even if it's a nation like Pakistan, which is the global epicenter of terrorism. We would not do that. So let me categorically say this. India, there is no Indian hand behind this. The Pakistani foreign ministry will say such things. They are a bunch of liars. Okay? Sadly, it's true. It's true. Um, and they will try and cover up their shortcomings and their intelligence failures and their military weakness and other weaknesses by blaming India for what happened. So there is no Indian hand behind this whatsoever. The Pakistani government may make such accusations, nothing surprising about it, but they are doing it only to cover up their weaknesses and their shortcomings and their failures, their catastrophic failures. So there was this all of this is being asked in the context of the recent hijacking of the Jafar Express in Balochistan near in the Bolan region by the freedom fighters of Balochistan, the Balochistan Liberation Army. So what they did is they hijacked this train, they stopped it, they identified all the civilians, all the men, women, children, elderly, etc. They asked them to leave and go to safety. And there happened to be a large number, maybe more than 280 uh, more than 280 Pakistani army or military personnel on the train, and those individuals were captured by the Balochistan Liberation Army. And the BLA then gave the Pakistani government or military, whatever it is, a time of 48 hours to release all the civilians who have been illegally detained and thrown into prison by the Pakistani military. There's this operation going on in Balochistan. So they gave them 48 hours. The BLA gave the Pakistani military 48 hours to release these prisoners, and that did not happen. And then the BLA has released a statement saying that they have executed those 280 plus Pakistani military personnel. But the Pakistani government and military will say that they have rescued all the hostages and so on and so forth. So there are two versions of what's happening. The Pakistani military will say that there have been very few casualties. We've rescued all the hostages, and just a few people have died, and we have liquidated all the Balochistan Liberation Army freedom fighters. That's what the Pakistani military will claim. The BLA has put out a statement saying that something very, very different, and what I just said. So who do you believe? It's up to you who you want to believe. Obviously, we don't have boots on the ground. We don't have eyes on the ground over there, so we don't really know what's happening. There's a lot of footage coming out that's being put out by the BLA that I would rather say don't see it, because it is disturbing, and there's bloodshed in it. So I would recommend not to see that in case you're sensitive, and so on. So I would tend to believe what the BLA is saying and not what the Pakistani military is saying. The Pakistani military has a long standing history of lying about their casualties, of not owning up to their own dead military personnel. We've seen that over and over again. So that's what has happened. Now the question is, who's funding it, who's funding the Balochistan freedom movement, and so on. Look, I don't know. Okay, I can only speculate. Is the US doing it? Well, Pakistan is a US vassal. Why would the US want Pakistan to be destabilized? Right, good question. Yes. uh, okay, let's take a look at where Balochistan is on the map, because we are discussing it. So let us do that. Let's take a look at the map. Where's the map? We'll see the map. So we're looking at the western part of India, present day temporarily Pakistan, and this region here, okay, in the middle of the screen is more or less Balochistan. I can search for it. Balochistan, Balochistan. That's it. And yeah, it won't give you a demarcation. If I say Pakistan, just for the sake of doing that, once again, it is not giving you any boundaries. But this region is Balochistan, and it's very interestingly the map is putting Iran actually in the center of the screen, which is interesting. This region of Iran, because Balochistan is a region that's historically, you know, half of it is currently in Pakistan, half of it is currently in Iran. So that is the deal. Now, what was the question that was asked? Who could be behind this, right? So, look, the US would probably not be behind this, because Pakistan is a US vassal, a US asset. Why would they destabilize their own asset? Could the Taliban be behind this? Well, the Taliban hates Pakistan. We know that, and they have this big territorial dispute with Pakistan, because the Pashtuns want to regain the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa region that has historically been theirs. Um, so yes, it kind of would make sense for the Taliban to aid the BLA. That kind of would make sense. But then you also have to understand the complication which results from the fact that the Taliban receives allegedly between 30 to 50 to 100 million dollars in cash from the US per week, which means the Afghan Taliban is a US asset. But geopolitics is complicated. So, despite being a US asset, they may be funding the Balochistan Liberation Army. It's possible. Would Iran fund the BLA? Well, it's complicated, and probably they would not do it, because half of Balochistan is in Iran. So, if you're funding the Balochistan Liberation Movement in Pakistan, it would also create a similar sentiment in the Iranian portion of Balochistan. And Iran has it already has enough headaches to deal with. So I don't think Iran would do that. So maybe the Afghan Taliban could be behind this. I'm just guessing. I don't know. It's a possibility, but I will categorically deny any Indian involvement in this. Will we see a free Balochistan in the future? Sooner or later, we will see a free Balochistan in the future. Sooner or later, there are so many internal forces in Pakistan that seek to well, which seek to pull Pakistan apart at the seams. And it's only because of external interference that Pakistan remains united temporarily as an artificial geopolitical entity. It's because of the support of outside powers that the Pakistan military continues to exist, because it has no source of income. Pakistan is a nearly bankrupt nation. It has always been on the verge of bankruptcy the past 20-30 years, right? Um, so it's because of US support that the Pakistani military currently exists. Before that, it was Chinese support. Now it's US support. US is the big daddy. So as long as Pakistan has geopolitical significance and use for the US as a counterbalance or destabilizing factor towards India, not a nice thing, but it is what it is. As long as that utility is there, Pakistan will continue to exist as a single entity. Once India becomes more powerful and Pakistan becomes less useful, Pakistan will eventually disintegrate. I hope it happens peacefully. I have no ill will towards the people of Pakistan who have been suffering since 1947, right? So I have no ill will towards the people of Pakistan. But this is an artificial, temporary nation. Its sole purpose, the sole purpose for the creation of Pakistan was to serve the geopolitical interests of external powers and not the interests of the people. So The sooner this happens, the better it is.